the latest news that we've learned from Zelensky, that he has confirmed that he'll meet with Donald Trump to discuss the points, the 28 points. It seems that the Ukrainian delegation had a meeting with Americans and Europeans, and Marco Rubio was there, and they have adjusted some of the points. They have what is your take on what's going on right now, and what is the latest news? What's your take on the latest news on the plan, 28-point plan?
Well, first, let me say that President Trump, did a great service in presenting this 28-point peace plan. It was it was last Tuesday. It was leaked, perhaps by Keith Kellogg, who's on his way out. He's reportedly resigning and leaving his post as U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine in January. It looked like that was maybe a protest resignation because he didn't like the peace plan. In my latest article on my Real War Substack, at dpyne.substack.com, I surmised that Russia likely would accept 25 of those points. They were just some 3 key ones that they would reject. But the latest news is that Rubio, essentially yesterday, Ukraine and EU leaders met together and came up with their alternative 28-point peace plan. And that plan was really very much unacceptable to Russia. It really sought to just sabotage and destroy any chances for peace that Trump has been trying to do, not consistently, very inconsistently, actually. Just brief periods of time. The first 3 months, he sought for peace up and from late January into early May, and then he started going to the neocon side, and then at the Anchorage Peace Summit on August 15th. During much of August, he was striving for peace, came up with a deal with Putin whereby Russia would accept a ceasefire in exchange for the transfer of Western Donbass region, rather Donetsk region, back to Russia. And then this latest proposal, was very constructive. It was received very favorably from Russian President Vladimir Putin. But then the latest news is that Rubio and probably his equivalent, Ukrainian foreign minister, have met together and taken out all the points that Zelensky didn't like, and now it's back to the Zelensky plan, just like happened when Trump met with Zelensky in the White House on October 17th and told him that Ukraine was going to lose, and Trump had Russia had a very reasonable peace deal that they were offering that would be very good for Ukraine, and that Zelensky needed to sign it, or else Ukraine was going to be destroyed. And now, it's just history keeps repeating itself. This administration is proceeding almost in a bipolar fashion, where they make these great grandiose moves for peace. Trump is all for it. He seems to maybe pressure Zelensky to do something, and then within 3 days or less, he drops everything. There was a deadline until yesterday. Trump had a deadline of Thanksgiving for Zelensky to accept the proposal, or else U.S. aid would be cut off. That was clearly implied both on the U.S. side and in Zelensky's video address, which seemed very sober, in which he said this was a critical time for Ukraine, perhaps the most dangerous that Ukraine had ever experienced, where he was, Ukraine would either have to give up its dignity by accepting the Trump peace plan, or else lose the support of a key partner, which of course was referring to the United States. And now with this 19-point peace plan, essentially what the changes it made is the Donbass isn't going to be given up to Russia anymore. That question is being put off until later. All limits on the size of Ukraine's military, which by my estimates is under 200,000 active duty troops left remaining on the battlefield. In the EU plan, in the Trump plan, it was 600,000, so they could triple the size of their military. In the EU plan, it was quadrupling the size of their military to 800,000. And now Rubio has agreed to cut off all limits on the size of Ukraine's military or their weapon systems, which is, that takes away, one of Russia's top 3 demands when they invaded Ukraine and immediately sought for peace with Ukraine. It was denazification, demilitarization, and neutrality for Ukraine. And the question, I think, even the question of NATO membership is now, that was the other big issue that is now taken out of the 19-point peace plan. Once 28-point peace plan, now it's 19. So NATO membership is now up in the air. So it's not part of any deal. And now they're going to present that to Russia. And Russia, of course, is going to immediately reject that. And then everyone will blame Russia for refusing peace after Putin said, yeah, we liked the Trump peace plan. Now they took out all the parts that were acceptable to Russia. And it's clear that from Trump's previous modus operandi, he's going to escalate the war and resume the sale of long-range strike missiles, air-launched cruise missiles fired from Ukrainian F-16s that are reportedly manned by former U.S. Air Force F-16 pilots to strike Russia, deep into Russia, perhaps even into Moscow Oblast. So this is terrible news that we learned today, unfortunately.
Today we've learned from Washington Post, one of the officials in Washington has informed them that Donald Trump is not that much involved in the process of preparing these sort of documents. It's somehow amazing who's doing this, David. You're looking at this administration. I don't see J.D. Vance being that much involved. And who's doing this? Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State, at the same time, the National Security Advisor. And you mentioned Keith Kellogg, that he's getting, he's somehow, he wants to quit. But who else is participating, is preparing these documents, and who is deciding about, right now they put out 28 point, and as you mentioned, it's reduced to 19 point. So I think one of the main goals was, the size of the military of Ukraine, which was 600. Today I was talking with Paul Craig Roberts. He said that even 600,000 would be too much for Russian to accept. And you see all of a sudden they are removing these points. And who's behind this, in your opinion? And who's going to put pressure on Zelensky?
Well, the problem is the Trump administration is badly divided between the neocon wing of the administration, which is led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, includes UN Ambassador Mike Waltz, John Ratcliffe, the director of CAA. There are reports that the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Kane is also in the neocon bandwagon, and then on the America First side, or Steve Witkoff, who negotiated the 28-point peace plan with Russia, which was subsequently modified by the Ukrainian former defense minister, Ustinov or Yermov, I think. But then there's also, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Defense, Vice President J.D. Vance, on the America First side, and others, just a few others. Dan Driscoll is Secretary of the Army. He doesn't have a lot of influence, but he was picked instead of Pete Hegseth or Tulsi Gabbard or the CIA director to go to Kyiv and tell Zelensky to accept the deal, and only to find out that just a day or two later, a couple days later, Zelensky, I think that happened on Wednesday, and then here we are on Monday, 5 days later, and Zelensky has gotten everything he wanted with this 19-point peace plan. So Witkoff wrote the initial plan, which was a true compromise agreement with Russia. It got modified, put some poison pills in there from Ukraine. Zelensky said he still wasn't going to accept the deal, even though he had input through his former defense minister in the terms of the agreement, and now basically Trump and Rubio have caved to everything Zelensky was asking for, and there's really nothing left in terms of a real peace proposal that Russia would even consider. This sounds even worse than the peace plan that was delivered by, was written by Keith Kellogg, who's an ardent neocon, as who we mentioned, is reportedly decided to resign just mere hours after the peace proposal was released on Tuesday.
you looking at the 28 points, in my opinion, the key components of this plan was, one of them was the in territorial concessions by Ukrainians, limitation on its military, and relationship with NATO. I don't know if all of these points were removed from.
Yes, all three of those points are reportedly removed, according to the New York Post and other sources. So, yeah, basically everything Russia has demanded, really very consistently since, within the last year and a half, certainly, since their June 2024 proposal has been taken out of the agreement. So there's really nothing left for the Russians to consider. This peace proposal, it's really the Zelensky plan. Trump allowed Zelensky to change it to his liking, and now it's the Zelensky EU peace plan. Because the one thing that Trump has been very consistent on is he always caves and unilaterally surrenders to the neocons, the European EU heads who want perpetual war, and of course Zelensky, whose very dictatorship and continued rule in Ukraine is conditional upon continuation of the war.
You think that the Europeans, how do you see the role of Europeans in the whole situation? Because Europeans, whenever they're talking about, I don't know, Zelensky, what is the role of Zelensky right now in Ukraine without the help coming from European, the support that they're getting from the United Kingdom, for example, from Germany, mostly from the United Kingdom? And how does the President of the United States see Zelensky and his administration?
Well, I mean, we've had some indications as to how President Trump truly sees Zelensky, because during his February 28th meeting with Zelensky in the White House, they had a big argument, and it was very public. And then October 17th, he had a very profanity-laced meeting in which Trump was cussing out Zelensky incessantly, and threw his map on the floor, and which was a map that Zelensky brought to try to underscore the importance of Western Donetsk to the defense of the Ukrainian state. And, so one would think that based on, and not only that, but President Trump, I think it was just yesterday, it was reported that, President Trump posted a Truth Social in which he said that Ukraine has been very ungrateful for, in its response to the peace proposal, which President Trump issued so generously. That is the most realistic peace proposal and probably the better terms that Ukraine could possibly get from Russia. And Zelensky just essentially gave Trump the middle finger and said, "Screw you! We're not gonna do what you want. We're gonna do it my way or the highway." And I have the backing of Starmer from the UK and Macron from France and Merz from Germany. And we're just going to gain up on you, and you claim to be a superpower, but you always cave to us. So you're going to do it our way.